The world is fully mapped, but it is definitely not fully open. Right now, there are heavily guarded islands, secret vaults, and bizarre quarantine zones where stepping over an invisible line will get you instantly arrested. We are revealing 50 deeply weird laws about places you are strictly forbidden from visiting. Get ready to explore the absolute strangest keep-out signs on the planet. 1. Surtsey Island in Iceland is entirely off-limits to everyone, except a few highly vetted scientists. Why? It was formed by a volcano in the 60s, and the government strictly uses it to study how life develops without human interference. The most hilarious rule? You have to aggressively scrub your clothes and boots for accidental seeds before stepping ashore. One scientist famously broke the ecosystem by improperly disposing of his human waste, resulting in a rogue tomato plant sprouting on the barren ash. Yes, the government had to assassinate an illegal tomato. 2. The Brazilian Navy strictly forbids any civilian from setting foot on Ilha da Queimada Grande, better known as Snake Island. This isn't a friendly suggestion. It is a rigid federal law. The island is infested with thousands of golden lancehead vipers, meaning there is roughly one deadly snake for every square meter. You cannot go even if you sign a waiver, as the venom rapidly destroys human tissue. Honestly, would you even want to visit a piece of land where every step has a 100% chance of ending in a lethal bite? Nature put up a permanent keep-out sign here. 3. The Indian government has made it a severe criminal offense to travel within 3 nautical miles of North Sentinel Island. The indigenous Sentinelese people have lived there in complete isolation for thousands of years and respond to all visitors with a massive barrage of arrows. The law isn't just to protect clueless tourists from getting turned into pincushions. It protects the tribe from modern diseases. By law, you cannot even fly a drone over the canopy. It is one of the few places on Earth where forced isolation is a heavily enforced federal mandate. 4. Niihau is a Hawaiian island affectionately dubbed the Forbidden Isle, and trespassing here is essentially impossible. The entire island is privately owned by the Robinson family, who bought it in the 19th century. The law of the land dictates you can only visit if you have a personal, written invitation from a resident or the owners themselves. There are no paved roads, no indoor plumbing, and a strict ban on alcohol. If someone offered you an all-expenses-paid trip to a tropical paradise, but you couldn't have a single beer or take a hot shower, would you still go? 5. Right in the middle of New York City's East River sits North Brother Island, completely abandoned and illegal to access. New York Parks Department regulations make it a massive misdemeanor to step ashore. It used to house a notorious quarantine hospital where Typhoid Mary was kept in forced isolation. Today, the ruins are crumbling, and the city strictly bans visitors because the island has been reclaimed by protected nesting herons. The city decided that letting wild birds raise their chicks is infinitely more important than letting urban explorers film social media videos in an old plague ward. 6. You are permanently banned from entering the Lascaux Caves in France, a site containing some of the most spectacular prehistoric art ever discovered. The French government outlawed public access in 1963 because human presence was literally destroying history. Simply breathing inside the cave alters the humidity and carbon dioxide levels, which caused a devastating black mold to eat away at the ancient paintings. The official rule is so strict that even leading archaeologists are only allowed inside for a few minutes a year. Your breath is legally classified as a biological hazard here. 7. Everyone jokes about storming Area 51, but the legal reality is terrifying. The airspace above this Nevada military base is the most restricted on the planet, heavily protected by federal law. If you step past the unmarked desert boundary, the use of deadly force is authorized signs are absolutely not a bluff. Private security contractors in unmarked trucks will instantly detain you, and the FBI will ruin your life. Trying to catch a glimpse of top-secret aircraft will simply earn you a fast federal felony. 8. Heard Island is an Australian territory floating in the middle of nowhere near Antarctica, and the laws guarding it are obsessively strict. The Australian Antarctic Division requires a mountain of paperwork just to sail near it. If you miraculously get a permit, you must follow incredibly rigid biosecurity laws. Every single piece of your clothing, equipment, and gear must be meticulously scrubbed, vacuumed, and inspected for microscopic alien spores or seeds before you land. The government will aggressively prosecute you if you accidentally introduce a foreign weed to their pristine penguin habitat. 9. The East Grand Shrine in Japan is a complex of over 100 shrines, but you will never see the main one. It is legally off-limits to everyone except the highest-ranking Shinto priests and members of the Japanese imperial family. The security fence restricts anyone from even getting a good look at the main structure, which is allegedly home to the sacred mirror of the emperor. The strangest architectural rule? The entire shrine is completely demolished and rebuilt from scratch every 20 years, a wildly expensive tradition meant to symbolize the impermanence of all things. 10. The Bank of Spain in Madrid protects its national gold reserve with an absolutely unhinged architectural law. Deep underground, the main vault sits completely isolated. If unauthorized entry is detected, security protocols do not just lock the heavy doors. A specially engineered system legally permits the entire subterranean chamber to instantly flood with water from a nearby fountain, drowning any thieves. They literally engineered a lethal medieval booby trap directly into a modern federal banking system. 11. Deep inside a frozen mountain in Norway lies the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, built to survive the literal apocalypse. You might think being a billionaire could buy you a VIP tour, but Norwegian law permanently bans all public access to the facility. Only a handful of designated vault managers are ever allowed to unlock the massive steel doors. It stores copies of the world's crops to restart agriculture after a global catastrophe. If humanity completely collapses, this frozen bunker is our only backup plan. What exactly do they know that we do not? 12. By an ancient legal decree that has stood for over 1,000 years, Mount Athos in Greece explicitly bans all women from stepping foot on the peninsula. It gets weirder. The law extends to the animal kingdom, strictly outlawing female cows, sheep, and dogs. The only exception the monks allow is for female cats, simply because they need them to catch mice. Imagine maintaining a border patrol dedicated entirely to checking the gender of passing livestock. It is an orthodox spiritual sanctuary where half the human population is legally classified as contraband. 13. The Archaeological Survey of India has erected a massive, legally binding sign outside Bhangar Fort with a bizarre warning. Entering the premises between sunset and sunrise is strictly a criminal offense. The official reason? Ghosts. Local legends claim the entire ruined city is fiercely cursed by a dark sorcerer, and night visitors historically disappear without a trace. It is completely absurd for a modern federal government to pass legislation based on paranormal activity, but they are absolutely not taking any chances. Would you spend a night there? 14. You can casually walk through St. Peter's Basilica, but the Vatican Apostolic Archive is a highly guarded fortress. 85 kilometers of underground shelving hold centuries of papal documents, scandals, and state secrets. Access is strictly forbidden to the general public. To even request entry, you must be a world-class scholar, endure a rigorous background check, and explicitly ask for a single document. You cannot browse. If you look at anything else, you are permanently expelled. They guard history tighter than most nations guard gold bars. 15. Picture a gorgeous Italian island floating in the Venetian lagoon. Now add the fact that the government fiercely outlaws public visits because the soil is literally 50% human ash. Poveglia Island was a plague quarantine station and later a deeply abusive psychiatric hospital. The Italian government technically owns it, but completely refuses to let tourists near the decaying, haunted ruins. They occasionally try to lease it to developers, but the strict regulations and horrifying history make it impossible. Sometimes prime real estate is just permanently cursed. 16. Deep underground in China sits the mausoleum of the first emperor, surrounded by his famous terracotta army. While you can look at the clay soldiers, the actual tomb is fiercely protected by a federal excavation ban. The Chinese government legally refuses to open it. The ancient historian Sima Qian claimed the burial chamber is surrounded by flowing rivers of liquid mercury, and modern soil tests actually confirm dangerously high toxic levels. It is a brilliant mix of respecting ancient heritage and legally preventing archaeologists from being accidentally poisoned. 17. Technically, private corporate policy can act as an impenetrable law. In Atlanta, the secret formula for Coca-Cola sits inside a high-tech, multi-million-dollar vault at the World of Coca-Cola Museum. You can walk right up to the heavy steel door, but crossing the threshold is legally impossible. The recipe is considered one of the most heavily guarded trade secrets on Earth. Even the board of directors cannot casually stroll in. You have a significantly higher chance of walking into the Pentagon undetected than reading the physical piece of paper detailing how to make a Coke. 18. Off the coast of South Carolina lies Morgan Island, locally known as Monkey Island. Trespassing here is a strict federal crime punishable by massive fines and potential jail time. The island is entirely populated by a colony of roughly 4,000 free-roaming rhesus monkeys. They were moved there in the 70s for medical research. You are legally forbidden from docking a boat or stepping onto the beaches. South Carolina law essentially decided that thousands of highly aggressive biting primates deserve an exclusive private beach club over local boaters. 19. The Woomera Prohibited Area in South Australia is a weapons testing range the size of England. If you ignore the warning signs and drive off the designated public highways bisecting the desert, military law kicks in immediately. You face instant arrest, but prison is actually your best-case scenario. The area is littered with unexploded bombs, crashed experimental rockets, and decades of scattered military shrapnel. The laws keeping you out are not just there to protect state secrets. They are mostly there to prevent wandering tourists from randomly exploding in the outback. 20. Everyone knows you can legally buy a ticket to tour a tiny sanitized section of the Paris catacombs. However, exploring the remaining 200 miles of dark, bone-filled tunnels is strictly prohibited by French law. A specialized police force, nicknamed the Cataflics, constantly patrols the freezing subterranean maze specifically to arrest urban explorers. If you get caught having a secret underground party surrounded by ancient skeletons, you will face hefty fines and permanent bans. Is partying in total darkness really worth a massive fine? 21. Bohemian Grove is a privately owned, heavily restricted 2,700-acre campground in California, where the global elite meet every summer. Trespassing laws here are enforced with military precision, featuring thermal cameras, private security, and local sheriff patrols waiting to arrest you. This is where former presidents, billionaires, and media moguls hold secretive theatrical rituals in the woods. Do you think a club of the world's most powerful men meeting in a secret forest with absurdly strict anti-trespassing laws is just innocent summer fun, or something entirely weirder? 22. The entire Japanese island of Okinoshima is considered a sacred kami, and the laws governing it are ancient and absolute. First, women are strictly banned from ever visiting. Second, the few men permitted to enter must strip completely naked and perform a freezing ocean purification ritual before stepping ashore. The most heavily enforced rule? It is a severe offense to take a single blade of grass home, and you are forbidden from speaking about what you saw. Would you take a vow of silence for a beach trip? 23. Archaeologists in Turkey uncovered Pluto's Gate, an ancient Roman portal to the underworld, and the government immediately made it illegal to approach. This was not due to some mythical curse. The cave sits on a major fault line that constantly spews a massive, invisible cloud of lethal carbon dioxide. In ancient times, priests held their breath to perform miracles. Today, birds that fly too close just drop dead. It is essentially a natural gas chamber protected by strict, modern safety legislation to keep tourists alive. 24. Blasted hundreds of feet into solid rock in Utah is the Granite Mountain Records Vault, owned by the Mormon Church. Trespassing here is entirely futile. The facility is protected by 14-ton steel doors designed to easily survive a direct nuclear blast. Inside are billions of genealogical records and microfilms, carefully climate-controlled and guarded like top-tier military secrets. The official policy absolutely denies public access under any circumstances. Why does a church need a doomsday bunker for family trees? 25. The Jiangsu National Security Education Museum in China has the strangest admission policy in the world. By strict federal mandate, no foreign nationals are allowed inside. Chinese citizens can freely buy a ticket to look at historical spy gadgets, hidden cameras, and classified espionage documents. However, if you do not hold a valid Chinese ID, you are immediately turned away at the door. They essentially built a massive tourist attraction solely to flaunt their spy history, but strictly only to their own local people. 26. You know Fort Knox holds America's gold reserve, but the laws surrounding its access are hilariously extreme. Not a single person alive knows the complete combination to the main vault. The code is divided among multiple staff members who are legally forbidden from sharing their pieces. Furthermore, there is a strict federal mandate that no visitors are allowed. Not even the sitting president of the United States can casually demand a tour of the vault. The gold is technically theirs, but they cannot even look at it. 27. Hawaii is a dream destination, but setting foot on the island of Kahului will trigger an immediate state police response. For decades, the U.S. military used the entire island as a literal bombing range. State law now strictly prohibits unauthorized access, primarily because the ground is still heavily peppered with unexploded artillery shells. It is currently being restored by native Hawaiians, and the extreme legal barrier is the only thing keeping oblivious tourists from accidentally detonating hidden decades-old explosives. 28. The Chernobyl exclusion zone has areas open to reckless tourists, but Ukrainian law fiercely outlaws entry into the basement of Reactor 4. This is the resting place of the elephant's foot, a massive, solidified mass of intensely radioactive corium lava. It is so toxic that spending just a few minutes in the room will deliver a completely lethal dose of radiation. The legislation keeping you out isn't about protecting government secrets. It is a straightforward biological imperative to stop you from physically melting down. 29. Private corporate mandates can be just as brutal as federal laws, especially at Disneyland's Club 33. Hidden behind an unmarked door in New Orleans Square, this ultra-exclusive club boasts a decade-long waitlist and requires tens of thousands of dollars to join. If you finally get in, the rules are dictatorial. Members have been permanently expelled for taking a single photograph in the wrong hallway or speaking too loudly. Can you imagine paying that much money just to be absolutely terrified of breaking a minor rule? 30. Just a short drive from Washington, D.C. lies Mount Weather, a massive underground facility run by the federal government. Local laws and heavy military barricades make it entirely inaccessible to the public. This is the official emergency relocation center for the highest levels of the U.S. leadership. If a catastrophic disaster strikes, this hollowed-out mountain is where the elite will run to keep the country operating. It operates under a permanent veil of classified secrecy, leaving the rest of us locked out of the survival bunker. 31. Deep in the remote Australian outback sits Pine Gap, a joint defense facility run by the CIA and Australian intelligence. A specialized federal law makes it explicitly illegal to even point a camera at the perimeter fence. If you decide to hop the barbed wire for a closer look, you face 7 years of immediate imprisonment. It is a massive echelon of satellite dishes tracking global communications. Are you comfortable knowing they can hear everything but you can't even see their parking lot? 32. You are strictly forbidden from entering a highly secretive facility inside the Workers' Party building in Pyongyang, simply known as Room 39. This isn't just a restricted office. State law dictates absolute secrecy around this operation. It is allegedly the headquarters for the regime's massive illegal slush fund, managing everything from counterfeit currency to gold smuggling. If a foreign tourist miraculously got inside, the legal penalty would likely bypass a trial entirely. It is the ultimate supervillain lair hidden in plain sight. 33. For 800 years, a massive region in Mongolia known as the Great Taboo was strictly guarded by law under penalty of death. Why the intense security? It is the deeply guarded, undiscovered resting place of Genghis Khan. Until the late 20th century, the government heavily enforced the ban, preventing any civilian or foreigner from entering the sacred mountains to ensure his grave was never disturbed. Even today, strict heritage laws severely restrict access. Sometimes, ancient curses are just replaced by strict government zoning laws. 34. Just off the coast of San Francisco, the jagged Farallon Islands are strictly closed to the public by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The official reasoning highlights the need to protect massive colonies of nesting seabirds and the surrounding waters infested with great white sharks. However, the federal government also quietly dumped nearly 50,000 barrels of radioactive waste near the islands in the mid-20th century. Between the lethal predators and the glowing trash, a strict federal ban is honestly doing you a massive favor. 35. Following the utter devastation of the First World War, the French government completely legally sealed off a massive area known as the Zone Rouge. Over a century later, agricultural and public access remains fiercely forbidden by national law. The soil is absurdly toxic, completely saturated with dangerous arsenic, lead, and millions of unexploded artillery shells. Entire villages were legally erased from existence. It is a terrifying reality where the government had to pass a permanent law declaring a piece of their own country completely uninhabitable. 36. Running straight through the middle of Cyprus is an impenetrable stretch of land strictly controlled by international law. The United Nations buffer zone was established in the 70s, instantly freezing neighborhoods, cafes, and an entire international airport in time. Trespassing is a severe violation of treaties and will get you aggressively detained by armed UN peacekeepers. Imagine an entire modern airport filled with rotting passenger planes that is completely illegal to enter. 37. Inside a modest, heavily fenced compound in Ethiopia sits the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, allegedly holding the original Ark of the Covenant. The religious laws governing this site are flawlessly absolute. Only one specific, legally appointed guardian monk is ever permitted to enter the chapel. No presidents, no popes, and absolutely no tourists can cross the threshold. When that monk eventually dies, he names a single successor. It is the ultimate VIP room, with a permanent guest list of exactly one human being at a time. 38. Diego Garcia is a tropical atoll in the Indian Ocean that looks like a luxury vacation resort, but trying to visit will get you intercepted by armed patrol boats. The British government controls the island and strictly leases it to the United States military. The laws here explicitly ban all journalists, tourists, and unauthorized civilians. You cannot even anchor a sailboat nearby during a violent storm without facing severe legal and military consequences. It is a billionaire-tier tropical paradise that exists exclusively to store stealth bombers and highly classified military hardware. 39. If you want to visit Sable Island, a remote sandbar floating off the coast of Nova Scotia, you must undergo a rigorous background check by Parks Canada. It is heavily protected by federal law, primarily to shield its legendary population of wild horses. Unauthorized boats are aggressively chased away, and you are completely forbidden from interacting with the animals if you magically get approved. The government treats this foggy, shipwreck-littered sandbank like an exclusive, heavily armed petting zoo where touching the animals is a federal crime. 40. Millions of people visit Mount Rushmore to stare at the giant carved presidents, but national park laws strictly ban you from exploring the secret room hidden behind Abraham Lincoln. The Hall of Records was blasted into the solid granite to hold America's most important historical documents. However, public access is entirely forbidden by federal legislation because the sheer cliffs are incredibly dangerous. You are legally locked out of a hidden time capsule hovering above a famous monument. 41. Entire city limits can be legally classified as exclusive zones. In Saudi Arabia, federal law absolutely prohibits any non-Muslim from ever entering the holy city of Mecca. This is not just a polite request. Highway checkpoints are heavily militarized, and getting caught sneaking in carries severe penalties, including immediate deportation. They even built a massive dedicated bypass highway solely to reroute unauthorized tourists away. Would you risk international jail for a road trip? 42. You might think the bottom of the ocean is a lawless frontier, but the wreck of the Titanic is heavily protected by an international treaty. The United States and the United Kingdom passed strict maritime legislation, making it completely illegal to take any artifacts or even conduct a dive without federal permits. The broken ship is officially designated as a protected maritime memorial. Even miles underwater in the freezing darkness, international law will aggressively prosecute grave robbers. 43. At the very top of the Eiffel Tower, hidden above the crowded tourist observation decks, sits a private apartment. Gustave Eiffel built it exclusively for himself. Today, French architectural laws and strict monument regulations completely forbid anyone from entering. Millions of people visit the tower annually, but that specific room remains permanently locked behind thick glass. Eiffel used it to casually entertain Thomas Edison while denying access to the global elite. Talk about a strict guest list. 44. Deep inside a massive limestone mine in Pennsylvania is Iron Mountain, a heavily guarded underground fortress. You cannot just buy a ticket to see this subterranean city. It is fiercely protected by corporate security and strict non-disclosure agreements. Inside, they store the world's most valuable assets, from original music master recordings to the private photographic archives of billionaires. It is a highly classified, climate-controlled bunker exclusively built for ultra-rich paranoia. 45. We usually associate impenetrable vaults with gold, but in Kentucky, extreme corporate laws protect fried chicken. The original KFC recipe is locked inside a high-tech facility featuring thick concrete walls, motion detectors, and armed guards. The legal protocols are completely absurd. The two executives who know the spice blend are strictly forbidden from ever traveling on the same airplane. Imagine a multi-million-dollar security perimeter dedicated entirely to protecting pepper and garlic. 46. The ancient inner circle of Stonehenge is completely off-limits to the general public under strict British heritage laws. You used to be able to casually walk up and chip off a piece of the monument for a souvenir. Obviously, that almost destroyed it. Today, crossing the small rope barrier will trigger a massive security response and crippling fines. You can stare at the mysterious massive rocks from a legally mandated distance, but touching the prehistoric history is a severe criminal offense. 47. Underneath the streets of Odessa in Ukraine lies the largest network of catacombs on the planet, stretching for thousands of miles. Unregulated entry is fiercely illegal. These dark, freezing tunnels are a chaotic, unmapped labyrinth that has swallowed reckless urban explorers whole. Local authorities strictly mandate guided tours in very specific areas, and wandering off alone is essentially a guaranteed death sentence. Why would anyone willingly step into a pitch-black, endless stone maze? 48. At the tomb of the unknown soldier in Washington, D.C., military regulations act as an unbreakable barrier. There is no physical fence, just a simple rubber mat. If a tourist dares to cross that boundary or behaves disrespectfully, the heavily armed sentinel will instantly break their silent march, loudly command you to halt, and potentially draw their weapon. It is one of the only monuments in the world where crossing an invisible line legally justifies immediate physical military intervention. 49. High in the cliffs of Colorado, the ancient balcony house is fiercely guarded by federal park legislation. You are completely banned from hiking up to this cliff dwelling alone. The only legal way inside is with an armed ranger, climbing a terrifyingly steep 32-foot wooden ladder. The trespassing laws were enacted because looters were literally dynamiting ancient Puebloan history. It is an extreme architectural marvel where strict legal barriers are the only thing keeping history intact. All right, we have looked at 49 bizarre laws, and there is only one final entry left. But before we get to number 50, it is time for the final verdict. In our opinion, the award for the most unbelievable rule from today's list goes to the KFC recipe vault. Simply because maintaining a multi-million-dollar security perimeter to protect fried chicken spices is a hilarious peak of corporate paranoia. Do you agree with our verdict? Or did another forbidden place deserve this dubious honor? Let us know in the comments what you think. And now, our final number. 50. While tourists can buy tickets to see the grand state rooms of Buckingham Palace, the royal family's private quarters are guarded by intense security laws. Crossing the velvet ropes into these areas is an act of high treason. In 1982, a man named Michael Fagan famously broke into the Queen's actual bedroom. Following that massive security failure, the British government quietly rewrote the trespassing legislation. Today, taking a wrong turn looking for a bathroom will earn you an instant armed escort. We mapped the world, but clearly the government still owns the best secrets. Here is the real question. If you had a magical pass to completely bypass the law, which of these forbidden places would you break into first? And do you think humanity actually deserves to see what is hidden? Drop your arguments in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories.